Hello everyone, this is McKay here with BYU Multimedia Lab, and today we're going to be going over selection basics here in Photoshop. We'll be going through some of the tools and some other things you can use to get some more precise selections when you're working with your photos here in Photoshop. The first thing I want to show you is the rectangular marquee tool. This is our first selection tool, and this one's pretty straightforward. All you do is click and drag and it makes a rectangular selection for you. This is good if you're working with rigid shapes, but really not good for much else. And then along with that, you have the elliptical marquee tool. You click and drag here and it will make a circular selection for you as well. Again, this one is good if you're working with some more rigid shapes or want a quick selection in a quick shape, but these don't allow you a lot of flexibility, so they're hardly ever my go-to selection tools. So I'm going to Command D and go to a different selection tool here. I'm going to go up and I'm going to select this lasso tool. There are several different lasso tools. We'll start with just the basic one, and the lasso tool will allow you to click and drag to basically draw your selection. You want to make sure that you draw it in an enclosed shape, otherwise it will close that shape for you and might do some weird things. But if I quickly just draw around this triangle, even though I'm not being very precise, you can see that it's just selecting wherever I draw on my photo. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but if precision is what you're going for, I wouldn't maybe go for the basic lasso tool. Next up, you have the polygonal lasso tool. It will allow you to click on a point, and from that point you can click again and it will make a straight line. So this is good if you're working with a lot of straight lines, want to make a selection with straight lines. Maybe you're working with something more geometric in nature and you need to be more rigid. And last of all, you have the magnetic lasso tool, which in my opinion is the best lasso tool. This one will pick up the line of contrast in your photo, and Photoshop will automatically make that selection based on that line of contrast. As you can see, I clicked on the line of contrast between the frosting and the cookie, and I'm just drawing along this line of contrast, and Photoshop's automatically making that selection for me based on that line of contrast. Up next, we have, in addition to our lasso tools, a couple extra selection tools. We'll start with this very first one, which is my least favorite, called the magic wand tool. This will basically make a selection on color alone. I just clicked right here in the middle of my cookie and it's trying to make a selection based on the color alone, but you can see it's not picking up everything because there are slightly different shades of white right here in this frosting, and so it's being very temperamental with me, and so I honestly don't love using the magic wand tool. A better alternative is the quick selection tool. It's basically the same thing as the magic wand tool, but it's just smarter. It picks up various shades of the color so it can pick up a more accurate selection. And then last of all, this is the newest selection tool we have in Photoshop. It's the object selection tool. You click and drag in a square shape, just like the rectangular marquee tool. But the difference is the quick selection tool uses artificial intelligence to pick up what Adobe thinks the borders of your object are. So if I clicked and dragged along this cookie and it picked up the edges of that cookie, but it's not going to be as good if you're trying to make more precise selections within an object. As you could see here, when I tried to select just the frosting, it didn't do a very good job with that. However, if you're trying to select something as a whole, object selection is really quick and it helps you out a lot. The very last thing I want to show you is how to add and subtract from your selection. Chances are when you're making selections in Photoshop, you won't get it absolutely right on the first time, and you may need to add or subtract from what you already have selected. So as you can see here, when I'm trying to make multiple selections within this cookie, maybe I want to select both the circle inside and the circles that make up the ears. It's not going to let me do that unless I come up here to this very top menu. You have this little bar with some squares. You want to choose the one with two squares right next to each other that are both filled. That will let you add to your selection. And when I come back here and draw multiple circles, they will now connect to each other where they overlap and add to that selection. Alternatively, you can also subtract from a selection by choosing this next option, which will allow you to make a selection and it will subtract from what you already have selected. And last of all, you have the intersection option, which will allow you to only select the area where two selections overlap. So all of these tools will give you some additional utility when making selections in Photoshop to allow for some more specific selections. So that's about it for selection tools here in Photoshop. All of these will be super helpful in your Photoshop career, so it's important to know when to use each one. And yeah, that's basically it. So best of luck, you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.